this is Toma. Welcome back to my channel of Books and Soul. So today's video is a little bit different. It's actually inspired by Lucy the Reader. She's a booktuber who came up with this idea of a classics reading challenge. And the goal of this challenge is to read as many classics as you want to during the year. So I really like this idea. I think it's really fun and I would really want to participate in this challenge. I'm starting a little bit late because it's March and this thing has been going on since January. And so in this video, I thought I would share with you guys some of the classics that I really hope to get to this year. I really want to get more into classics. I really want to read more classics and I want to give as much time to them as possible during this year. So the list I prepared for today is a list of 12 books. I really wanted to vary things up. I wanted to make sure that I include women writers. I wanted to make sure that I don't only read English classics, but also foreign ones. I also have one children's classic and one fantasy classic as well. Okay, so without further ado, let me begin a presentation of the books I've chosen to read this year for the Classics Reading Challenge. I will show these books in the order I hope to read them throughout the year, but of course things may change and they're not set in stone. So the first book on my list is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë. As you can probably tell, I've already started this one. This is my March read. I started this one a little bit before because me and my sister were reading this one together, so it's fun to read it with someone else and then, talk about it. So this one's definitely the one that I hope to finish in March. I feel like a lot of people already know Jane Eyre, more or less. There's been a few movie adaptations and series done on this book. This Gothic fiction is actually told in the first-person narrative, and we follow Jane Eyre through her childhood as she grows up with her rich aunt, is sent to school, and after she becomes a governess at Thornfield Hall. She's supposed to be a governess for this little French girl, but of course, this being a Gothic fiction, there's some mystery surrounding the house, surrounding the master, Mr. Rochester, which Jane Eyre tells us about, and we get to see and experience through her eyes. So this is Jane Eyre. The second one on my list, which I know I'm starting it now in March, but it's probably going to drag on until at least August, I don't know, because it's pretty big, is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. This is actually just the first 2 volumes of the work, which is already fat, but then there's a second part to this book, which I still have to get. This is a Russian classic that I really want to read. In general, I really want to get into Russian literature. It's something that I've been fascinated by for a while now, and this, I must admit, is the second time I'm reading a Russian classic, the first one being at university, where we had to read The Gambler by Dostoevsky, which was this tiny short book. I definitely want to read more of Russian literature, and so I decided to start with War and Peace. In case you're wondering, this one's actually a Polish edition. I decided to read Russian classics in Polish since I feel like in the translation it will be closer to the Russian original, seeing as the languages are in the same Slavic family. Anyways, I'm super excited to read this. All I know about this, which is very, very little, is that this book has as its backdrop the Napoleonic Wars, where we're in the Russian Empire. I know that the Tsar at this point is Alexander I, and Napoleon is strong, he's going through Europe, and hence the Napoleonic Wars. I know there's a love component to this story. I know that the characters are from various social classes, so I think it will be a great read and I'm super excited to get into this one. War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. So my third book that I want to read in March as well, because it's short and also I have the audiobook of this book, is Przedwiośnie by Stefan Żeromski. Przedwiośnie, which I think in English was translated as The Coming Spring. So basically, Stefan Żeromski is a late 19th century Polish writer. This book in particular deals with a very specific moment in Polish history where after World War I, Poland is back on the map of Europe. And so, big questions like, what is this new Poland going to be like? How do we reconstruct Poland? These questions are huge and they're important for everyone. And this author addresses them as well. So I know that our main protagonist, Cezary Baryka, actually is born in the Russian Empire. The war breaks out, World War I breaks out. His father goes off to war He is left alone with his mom in the Russian Empire. The main character grows up in Russia. He experiences the revolution of 1917, and he actually also participates in this Bolshevik revolution. And then through various circumstances, he ends up in Poland, which just recently, after World War I ended, has become an independent nation. This is all I know so far. I don't know much more about this book. It seems to be very interesting. The premise is very interesting, and it has been recommended to me by my sister, who loves the interwar period of Poland, but also just in general of Europe. It's a fascinating time period between the two world wars. We'll see how this one goes. It's short, so I should be able to finish it this month, hopefully. Next on my list is a children's classic, and actually also an Italian classic, and it is Pinocchio. So this edition in particular, I'm really excited to read. It's been gifted to me by my parents-in-law, and it's a wonderful edition with great comments and great insights into the story. I mean, because Pinocchio by itself is not this long, but half of this book is comments to the story. I'm really excited to know the story better. I mean, we all know the main premise. It's a little wooden puppet made by Geppetto who really wants to be a real boy. He goes through all these various adventures. He meets people along the way, or animals, or things, creatures along the way, and I know that this book is really, there's just so much in it, a lot of symbolism, a lot of iconic characters that are just so commonplace in Italian culture, and so I want to know them. I'm very excited to read this book and see what I find out, so I'll let you guys know. The next book on my list is actually a book that I hope to be reading with my husband. So I'm reading an Italian book and so I am making him read a Polish one. It's a Polish classic. It's won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and it's a book by Henryk Sienkiewicz, which is called Vadis. This book is interesting. It's actually set in Rome. It's set in Rome during the rule of Emperor Nero, a very just crazy emperor. There were huge persecutions of early Christians during his rule, and there's the whole episode of him setting Rome on fire and then blaming it on the Christians, and so Christians are persecuted, and it's also seen as entertainment in the Colosseum. And against this historical situation of early Christian persecutions, we have this love story that develops between a Roman soldier, a Roman patrician, and between a young, beautiful Christian girl. This Roman patrician falls in love with this girl, and then he finds out that she's a Christian, which complicates things a little bit. We have St. Peter in this book. So this is Vadis. Really interested to read this. I still haven't read it, even though it's a big one in Polish literature. So okay, next classic on this list is, and like I said, I told you guys that there will be one fantasy classic. It is The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. As you probably know, the only book I've read by Tolkien so far has been The Hobbit. And so I think it's only natural that my next choice should be The Fellowship of the Ring. I'm super excited to get into this series, get started. I've heard such good things. I've also heard that the first 100 pages are tough to get through, but once you get past the first 100 pages, then the pace picks up and it's just wonderful. I don't think I have to talk too much about this book, but basically it's a sequel to Bilbo's adventure. So we have Frodo, who agrees to go on this quest to destroy the ring that Bilbo has found in The Hobbit. It's a ring that he found and he took from Gollum. In this one, I know that this is the beginning of the quest. The Fellowship of the Ring is established, is created, and then off they go on this adventure. Very excited to read this one. Super excited. The next book on my list is another English classic. It is Under the Greenwood Tree by Thomas Hardy. This one, it says actually on the back, is Hardy's most bright and optimistic novel, because I know that Thomas Hardy's not known for being the most cheerful writer out there. He is the author of Far from the Madding Crowd, for example. I know that one's a well-known one, but I decided to read this one first because it's pretty short, and I feel like if I want to get into Thomas Hardy, maybe I should start with this shorter one. I know nothing about this book except that it is supposed to be more cheerful and optimistic. I know it's supposed to take place in like a rural setting where there's this like almost a nostalgia to traditional ways of life, and there is a love story I think in this one. So this is all the information I can give you guys for now. So Under the Greenwood Tree, Thomas Hardy. The next book on my list is another English classic, basically from the Victorian era again. And this is an author that I've only read once before, but I read The Christmas Carol, and that is Charles Dickens. This time I want to read his Hard Times. It's a book that's been gifted to me by my mother-in-law for Christmas, I think 2 years ago. So I really want to get to it. I really want to read it. I've heard good things about it. I don't know much. The only thing that I understand from this one is that there are children protagonists in this book. The book is set in this fictitious industrial town in England. So I guess there's going to be themes closely connected with that and the problems of living in an industrial city. This book is about two siblings, Louisa and Tom, and they live in this town. But what the story is about, what is it exactly about these children that Charles Dickens is going to talk about, I don't know. I don't know the story or the plot. Just the general historical background of this book. So Hard Times by Charles Dickens. The next book on my list is another woman writer, and it's actually another Polish classic. So as you can tell, I'm trying to put a lot of Polish classics to read a lot of Polish classics this year. This one is called Granica, which has been translated as The Boundary. It was written by Zofia Nałkowska. Nałkowska is one of the best Polish women writers. So I know that this book is told in a retrospective way. So at the beginning, something big, something horrible happens that makes the protagonist think back to his life and how he got to this point in his life. It's supposed to be psychologically heavy, and in this book, from what I know, she looks at a lot of social issues, social problems that are present in society. This book was first published in the 1930s, if I'm not mistaken. So again, interwar Poland, that time period, changes in society, and we get to follow Zenon, who is who's the protagonist of this book, and we see his life as he, climbs the social ladder and what becomes of him and what kind of person he becomes. Another book on my list is a Jane Austen book, and this time I would like to read Northanger Abbey. It's again not one of her most known or most loved novels, but I do really want to see it. I want to see what it's about. I think it's supposed to be the first book written by Jane Austen. I know that in some ways she parodies Gothic fiction. So she's poking fun at that a little bit, which will be cool to read after I finish, Jane Eyre in March, and then I'll get to Northanger Abbey and see what Jane Austen is, is criticizing, or in some way at least, mocking a little bit. I only know that our main protagonist is a young girl named Catherine. I think that at some point in this book there's a mysterious, secretive mansion, which is a recurring theme in Gothic fiction. But other than that, I have no idea what this book is about. I don't know the story or the plot, so we'll see. The next book I would like to read is it's a collection of various stories, and as they call it, tales of mystery and imagination by Edgar Allan Poe. This is an American poet, writer. I haven't actually read him before, so I'm very excited to see what his stories are like. I know he's known for his grotesque and mysterious and horror stories. So I think this will be a very interesting read. It's supposed to include stories like The Gold Bug, The Black Cat, and The Murders in the Rue Morgue. So supposedly some of his better ones. So we'll see. And last but not least, which I am saving for December, for around Christmas time, is a French book. It's a French classic, and it is called Faite Amari, written by Claudel. In English, I think it's translated as The Tidings Brought to Mary. So I just thought it would be appropriate for around Christmas time. This is not actually a story about, you know, the tidings brought to Mary. So it's not about the Annunciation. From what I know, it's that it's a story about two sisters that are very different in temperament and in character. And that's it. That's all I know. This book is actually not a novel. It's a play. It's supposed to be very good and one of the best works of Paul Claudel. So we'll see. I haven't read anything by this author. I don't know. I don't know his work. I don't know his writing. I don't know. We'll see how this one will turn out. Okay, so to summarize, I have here 3 women writers. I have 1 French novel, 1 Italian novel, 1 Russian classic, 3 Polish classics, 5 English classics, in that 1 being American, 1 children's novel, 1 children's classic, and 1 fantasy classics. So, you know, I tried to vary it up as much as possible. I think there's a nice variety here. I'm really looking forward to this year, to this classics reading challenge. So let me know maybe in the comments below, what are some of your favorite classics, what classics you think I should read or get to eventually. I would really love to see your suggestions. And that's it for today. I'm sorry that this video is a little bit longer than usual. I hope it's not too boring for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you guys very soon. Bye!